Imagine this for a second. Your home is being taken away, and your only defense, your only shield, is a fortress built not out of stone, but out of paper. Well, this is the story of one homeowner who did just that, using meticulously crafted legal documents to stand up against an overwhelming force. It's a case that really asks the question, is the pen mightier than the bulldozer in a high-stakes battle over property, rights, and really the nature of justice itself?
So listen to this. We're talking 5 sheriff's vehicles, a police cruiser, about 7 officers. You'd think this was a raid on a major criminal operation, but no. This was the scene to remove a single homeowner, Jeremy Bass, from his house in Lewiston, Idaho. The scale of this operation right off the bat sets this incredible David versus Goliath tone. It tells you this was way more than just a routine civil matter. This was a show of force, and it was just getting started.
And the timing of this whole thing is absolutely critical. You look at this timeline and you realize it wasn't random at all. While Bass is literally at the courthouse that morning, fighting to get an emergency stay to stop this exact event, the operation is already kicking off at his home. Officers try to get his tenant to let them in, but he refuses. So what do? They disable the security cameras, break through a window, and change the locks. This was a strategically timed move, a race against the clock that the team on the ground was determined to win. And get this, the way they got in? It's almost poetic in a really grim way. They didn't just smash a door down. They climbed through a window that was basically a public billboard of legal protest. It was covered in legal documents, including a certified full reconveyance from 2009, a document that said the original loan on the house was paid off. So by climbing through that window, they physically passed through the very evidence that challenged their right to even be there. But this physical breach was about to run headfirst into a legal structure that had been built months earlier. This is what we're calling the paper fortress, a really sophisticated, proactive defense designed to withstand this exact kind of aggressive tactic and to push back against what some critics call procedural gatekeeping by the courts. So what exactly is a paper fortress? Well, it's not about playing defense after you've already been sued. No, it's about anticipating the attack. It's the art of engineering everyday legal documents, like leases and contracts, to create a series of legal tripwires and obstacles that can slow down, complicate, and even create liability for your opponent. It's basically using legal architecture as a weapon. And in this particular case, the fortress was built on 2 main pillars. First, a very, very unusual residential lease agreement, and second, a totally separate property storage agreement. These 2 documents, working together, were designed to create a powerful, multi-layered defense. All right, let's deconstruct the first weapon here. Now, on the surface, this just looks like a normal lease. But when you really start to peel back the layers, you see it's not a simple contract at all. It's more like a carefully engineered defensive shield, with clauses that were specifically designed to activate under the pressure of a foreclosure. This lease had 3 distinct layers of defense built right in. First, you've got the temporal shield. The 2-year term was just long enough to trigger powerful federal tenant protection laws, which makes a quick eviction basically impossible. Second, a structural impediment, a clause that made sure any new owner who bought the property automatically had to honor the lease and all its rules. And third, an economic moat, a big financial penalty if that new owner tried to terminate the lease early. Okay, now here is where the engineering gets really, really clever. This is the secret sauce. This slide shows you the kind of standard wording you'd find in a normal lease's termination clause. It says the landlord can release the payout requirement. Pretty simple, right? The person who owns the property has the power. But look at the change in Bass's version. The power to release that payout isn't given to the landlord, it's given specifically by name to Jeremy L. Bass. This tiny one-word alteration is the key to the whole trap. It separates the role of landlord, which can be transferred to a new owner, from the power to actually end the lease, which now stays exclusively with Bass himself. And the upshot of this, as attorney Lauren Townsend explains, is that the new corporate owners bought a property where they were legally the landlord, sure, but they had absolutely no power to get rid of the tenant or end the lease without Jeremy Bass's personal say-so. They inherited all the responsibilities with none of the control. A brilliant legal paradox. But that lease, that was just Layer 1. Bass built a second, totally separate line of defense with something called a property storage agreement. This was designed to protect all of his personal stuff inside the house, creating a legal shield that operated on a completely different playing field from the real estate dispute. And this agreement was built around a concept called a liability tripwire. And that's exactly what it sounds like, a legal landmine. Any third party, whether it's the new owners, their lawyers, or even the cops, who interfered with, moved, or damaged Bass's personal property would immediately trigger their own personal financial liability for those items. So here's the play-by-play. First, the agreement makes the tenant, Dwayne Pike, the official legal custodian of all of Bass's stuff. This is so important because it means the property wasn't just abandoned, it was under someone's legal care. Second, it shifts all liability for damage directly onto whoever interferes with it. And third, and this is just genius, it said that just by walking onto the property where the notice was posted, you were legally accepting the terms of the agreement.
And here is a fascinating, really telling detail from the day of the eviction. The source material points out that while the officers were tearing down other legal notices posted around the property, this one, the property storage agreement, was left untouched. That selective choice suggests that even the enforcing officers recognized that this particular document carried a different and maybe more dangerous kind of legal weight.
So what's the combined effect of these two documents? Well, it's strategically devastating. It creates what you could call a jurisdictional firewall. It basically splits one legal fight over a house into two completely separate wars, forcing the new owners to fight on two different legal fronts at the same time.
Let's just break that down. On one side, you've got real estate law. That's the fight over the house and the land, the foreclosure. That was the battle Bass was losing. But on the other side, you now have personal property and contract law, which governs everything inside the house. By creating this whole new second front, Bass massively increased the legal headache and the cost for his opponents.
So you might be wondering, did any of this actually work? You bet it did. Look at this court ruling. This is the proof. In a critical decision, the court granted a win, a summary judgment, against Bass on the real estate issue. But in that very same ruling, it denied the win against his tenant because of unresolved issues with the lease. This split decision is concrete proof that the paper fortress held up, validating the strength of that engineered lease agreement. And that's why this case is so much bigger than just one house in Idaho now. As it's moved through the courts, it's turned into a major test case for property rights, due process, and what some observers are starting to call a pattern of equity theft that happens through loopholes and procedural games. So now, the Idaho Supreme Court is staring down some really heavy questions. Was the eviction deliberately timed just to make the appeal pointless? Is disabling security cameras during an eviction a form of suppressing evidence? And here's a big one. Can you even have a meaningful appeal if you've already been physically thrown out of your home? And is the crazy high cost of a bond, which you need to pause an eviction, basically making justice impossible for regular people?
The core of Bass's appeal comes down to this legal concept, strategic mooting. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple and kind of scary. It's when one party in a lawsuit takes a drastic, irreversible action, like seizing a house, specifically to make a pending court appeal totally meaningless. It's a tactic designed to outrun the justice system itself.
And let's not lose sight of what this is really all about. This isn't just about abstract legal theories. At the heart of this entire fight is over $300,000 in home equity. That number really grounds the whole story, reminding us of the very real, life-altering financial stakes for the homeowner. At the end of the day, as one legal observer put it, this paper fortress stands for something more than just clever lawyering. It represents a form of resistance. It's a powerful argument, written on paper but backed by the force of law, that property rights are supposed to be fundamental protections, not just little technicalities that can be easily swept aside. Which brings us all the way back to the beginning. This case shows that a fortress of documents can create a truly formidable defense, preserving your rights long after the physical battle seems totally lost. But it leaves us with one heck of a question. In a world of unequal power, when the legal system itself can sometimes feel like a weapon, can paper and ink really be the ultimate shield?